I'd now like to welcome Professor Karen Reynolds from Flinders University. Karen will talk about leading the Medical Devices Partnering Program. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Perspectives. Firstly, the results of the survey from Kristin. We've also heard from Trevor. I think, Trevor, you've given actually a very wonderful introduction to my talk today, and also from Gus from both sides of the fence. What are the difficulties between universities and the industry working together? And I've, I suppose, illustrated a few of those in that slide together. I mean, we are chalk and cheese to a certain extent, and there are a number of different issues that do prevent us from perhaps not working together, but getting together in the first place. Issues such as different priorities, different motivations, different time frames. We sometimes work to different time frames. And of course, that ever ugly IP continues to rear its head. So as a result of that, particularly I think in the field that I work in, which is medical devices, which is a small, an SME industry or small to medium enterprise industry, we tend to work like this, or this is the traditional model, where as researchers we sit in our labs, we dream up fantastic ideas, we build prototypes, we build devices, we then go out and try and find a company to take it on, and it's just too late at that stage. And I have probably 20 different things sitting in cupboards in my lab that aren't going to go anywhere, and they're fantastic. I think they're fantastic, of course, but they're good ideas, but they won't go anywhere. And as I said, the research programs are technology driven as opposed to market driven or end user driven. Universities, we've already seen, don't really engage particularly well with industry, and as Trevor has said, it's the pathway, particularly for the small to medium industry, is how do they actually get into the university? Who do they talk to? There's this sea of faces, we don't know where to go, and when we get there we get lost. So there are issues, but what we've tried to do, and I'll talk you through the program in a minute, but what we've tried to do is actually change that model for our particular medical device industry here in South Australia and get those three groups working together from the beginning so that we actually do start to feel a bit of a cohesive unit. And clearly in the medical device sector there are three important areas really. There are the researchers and the companies or the industry, but of course we also need the input from the clinical people because they're the ones who know what the problems are, what the needs are of the particular industry. So if we can get those three groups working together early on, they can bring their different areas of expertise, so the researchers can bring research across multidisciplines. We can get certain funding opportunities, particularly from federal government schemes. The companies will have the market intelligence, the distribution channels. They can also access different funding pools. And the clinicians not only bring us the problems and the needs and some clinical expertise, they can also actually help us to test the devices once they're made. So they do provide effectively an access to clinical trials. So we decided, this was probably back in 2007, that we needed to try and put such a program into place for the medical device industry in South Australia so that we could start to get things moving. We looked at the building blocks that we have, and those included our research capabilities across the three universities, or three main universities in South Australia. We had close links with some of the industry in South Australia and close links with the government. We also, particularly at Flinders, having the Flinders Medical Centre on the same campus, we had very close links with the clinical community, but none of it was really being capitalised upon. We also do have a track record and had a good track record in medical device development, but in a very ad hoc process. So, for example, the picture you see on the right, that's a device that was built in the model that I showed at the beginning, where we built something and then went out trying to sell it. We finally did actually get it onto the market. It's a device that teaches people how to put very large needles into people's backs. It has been successful in a very small fashion, but it's been a really hard process getting it there. So we wanted to make the model work much better. So we've had a process of consultation and engagement with our partners, and then we tried to think where we could get some money from to support this program. We decided the Premier Science and Research Fund was a good source of funding to try to attract this, particularly with their focus on the advanced manufacturing sector in 2008. We went through the application process, and finally in late 2007 we were successful in securing some funding. think we got $1.3 million of cash for 3 years for the program. That's from a variety of sources, not just from the PSRF funds. So at that I will acknowledge the partners in the program. So these were the initial partners who came in on the bid with us. You can see there the 3 universities are mentioned. The state government particularly have a very strong role in this, and I would acknowledge the contribution of the state government, particularly the Premier Science and Research Fund, and also the Office for the Aging, who've made a big contribution for the idea of medical devices, assistive technologies, things that will keep people in their home for longer. We also, you can see there, have engagement from some commercialization organisations and a couple of companies who are perhaps involved in manufacturing, who we've involved at that point from a consulting point of view. What you don't see on that list really are any medical device companies, and I'll talk about that in a second. So in terms of the medical device partnering program, what it does really is it's trying to firstly facilitate the collaboration between those three groups, with the researchers, the companies, and the clinicians, the clinical staff, to, I suppose, assist the development of medical devices, particularly medical devices that we can actually get through onto the market. But one step beyond that, it's not just about a collaboration, it's not just about networking, but it actually provides a mechanism to actually undertake some projects. So as you'll see, it actually allows projects to be undertaken that are funded, fully funded through the program, so we can kickstart and perhaps develop some prototypes, proof of concept type studies. And there are some pretty simple criteria for the projects. Firstly, the project must be in medical devices or related technologies, assistive technologies, for example. It must be completed within 3 months or 250 hours, which is actually only a very short period of time in the sort of general scheme of things, but what we're trying to achieve through these projects is those relationships and those abilities to work together, the things, I think, the pathway perhaps that Trevor's talked about, so that we actually get these groups working together, and hopefully beyond the scope of the MDPP project we can actually build these into longer term relationships. The projects also have to have a South Australian content in some way, shape or form, so perhaps it's a South Australian company, the research would be done here, whatever, and obviously that's because of the investment by the state government. But the 2 last dot points are very important as well. They clearly must be end-user relevant, so it's not just something that I dream up in my lab because I think it might be useful. So we get the clinical involvement there, and there must be some market potential and somewhere that we can actually get these devices out into the market. So the partnering program itself, I hope we've built it to provide a clear and transparent process so people who come to us know what they're letting themselves in for. So what we do is we invite companies, we invite clinicians, we invite people with ideas to come and talk to us. We'll see if we can identify collectively a project that we could run through the partnering program, and once we've identified that project, we'll put together a workshop where we start to brainstorm the idea, and we'll pull in experts from across the universities who sometimes you can't really see why they're there, but actually they've got some really quite exciting ideas, and I think the companies are finding it quite inspiring to get ideas from across a range of sectors. And then we develop the project and we do 250 hours of project work, which that might be a proof of concept study, we might develop a prototype. In some cases, the companies or individuals who have come to us are really looking for help in commercialization, and that's when we draw on some of our partners to help develop a commercialization plan for that particular company. Also, there are some studies that we're doing which are more, once the products are already there, we're helping to give them some market or evaluation or validation data. One thing that I think is important in this is for the 250 hours that we provide, we make no claim on the intellectual property, and we do that on purpose because this has always been the stumbling block between universities and industry working together, is that you've got to try and sort all the IP out up front. It takes 2 years. What we do is we say at the end of the 250 hours we hand everything over to the company and they can do with it what they like. What we hope is that they'll come back to the university because we've got that good faith relationship going on. So in terms of current progress, we launched in July last year, and in the first 6 months of the program we had more than 30 inquiries from mostly companies, but also some individuals and clinicians. And that, to me, was a great relief because you can build something doesn't mean that they'll necessarily come. The sort of projects that we've had have varied from very, very early stage prototype development through any number of steps of validation. One company came to us with a device which was ready to run, but they had a technical fault and they couldn't solve it. So I hope we helped them. It's been very interesting. It's keeping me very busy. We're always pleased to speak to more people. If there's anyone who would like to find out more about the process or perhaps sign the name up, please, there's some contact details for you, and I'll be very pleased to speak with you afterwards. Thank you.